Hey beekeepers. Last time I did a video, it was on trying to figure out why your hives have different outcomes despite treating them all the same way and with the same care. This week, we're going to talk about 3 things to be more aware of so that you can begin to correlate cause and effect. In other words, what is happening outside the hive to explain what's happening inside the hive. And so by the end of this video, you're going to be a lot more aware of those things when you go into your beehives next time, and hopefully the time after that, and from now on. So stick around. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Hive Doctor. What if there were some external circumstances that you could be more aware of, just because that are actually steering and influencing what's happening inside of your hives a lot more than what we realize? The reason this is so important is because colonies don't just fail overnight. They don't suddenly collapse or die out. That happens gradually over a few weeks, and it's not the easiest thing to notice because, we go in for an inspection, we see one thing. We go in for another inspection, let's say 7 to 14 days later, and we notice a difference, but we didn't see what it took to get from point A to point B, much less understand the reasons behind it. And so when it comes to our inspections and our management, that usually happens after the colony's already been affected by and influenced by external circumstances. And here's how this typically unfolds. Step 1, the beekeeper inspects, finds a problem, you got a symptom. Step 2, the beekeeper takes action, manipulates things based on internal conditions, not what they're seeing on the outside. And in step 3, the colony responds to the beekeeper's good intentions, but not quite in the way that the beekeeper had hoped. Then confusion sets in, and the beekeeper asks, "What did I do wrong? Why didn't this turn out the way that I thought? I worked on this other colony this one time, why not here?" Right? Well, the problem isn't necessarily just management, just timing, and certainly not genetics. The issue is the environment and how the colony translates the environmental influences into its own internal biology. Think of the environment as a script to a movie, and the bees are just playing their parts. They're very good actors, and they know their lines really well, but they can only work within the parameters of the script, aka the environment. So you're not managing bees directly. The colony you see today is based on the environment several weeks ago, suddenly made visible to you. And when we stop to read the signals, which I'm about to show you on paper, or I like to call my trusty non-digital whiteboard, then the environment stops being a mystery and starts being a forecast for what the hive is going to look like weeks from now. So let's go ahead and move on to my trusty non-digital whiteboard, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. And this is going to become so clear to you, you're going to say, wow, I kind of knew about these things before, but I never quite saw them in this way. So I really think this is going to be a helpful thing for you, and you're going to enjoy it. So let's move on over. Okay, so here's the trusty non-digital whiteboard, and here are the environmental drivers. And there are only 3 of those. So it's weather, rainfall, and forage availability. So rainfall is an aspect of weather, but you need all of these things to align in order to have the things that we love to see ideally in a colony. If the weather is poor, too cold, the bees can't forage even if there is something available. If there's too much rainfall, the bees can't forage even if there's something available. But when we still need rainfall for nectar production. So when these 2 things align and there is something available for foraging, the bees will be able to take advantage of that and affect the next thing down, which is biological production. And there are 3 things in that are affected directly by the environmental drivers: egg presence, brood production by velocity, how quickly the colony is building up. If you've got a lot of forage on a day without rain and the weather is great, good temperatures, then the brood production is going to be faster than if these three things were less than ideal. And then the brood area, how much volume of brood do you have? So how large the population is able to get. And then the next thing affected down the line is going to be population and structure. So it's what the biological aspect of the colony is able to do when these environmental drivers are ideal, or if they're not ideal, these things are going to be affected as well. And there's 4 of those: adult population pressure, comb building, space adequacy, and resource placement. So just in brief, if there's plenty of forage and there's plenty of brood to gather that forage, they're going to build comb during a flow. But they're going to need a large population of adults to do that. They also need the space to store it. And depending on where they're storing their resources is going to dictate and kind of tell you where the colony is and where it's going. Are they storing their resources on the brood frames or on the peripheral of the brood nest, or are they storing it above the brood nest? And of course, this is how a colony expresses everything above it. And then it goes down to reproductive and expressive signals. So these things are going to lead to how they produce drones. And it's going to also express their queen cell activity, whether there's no queen cells because they're happy with their queen, supersedure cells because they need to replace her, or if there's queen cells because their adult population pressure is high, placed all their resources above, and they're now out of room because they don't have adequate space. And so everything down here is affected by everything up there. And the ultimate outcome of this is expressive outcome. And that's shown in behavioral tone. And so when you come up to a colony, you notice their behavioral tone right away. And this is an outcome of everything upstream. So why is this important? Good question. Well, this is important because when you go into a colony one day, let's say you're doing an inspection and you don't see a lot of brood. Well, it's very possible the reason for that isn't because you've got a failing queen or poor nutrition. It could be because a couple of weeks ago there was a lot of rainfall. And when there was a lot of rainfall, it affected how much egg presence there was, which is also going to slow down their brood production because now their resources are limited because they can't bring in resources on a rainy day. And that's also going to affect the volume of brood they have. And that directly correlates to how much adult population there is to go forage for available forage when the weather's ideal. And let's say during those rainy days, they were in there a while, they didn't have adequate space, they ran out of resource placement room, and so it affected their queen cell activity, and now they're going to swarm. And for all you know, you're just like, I don't understand why they swarmed. I thought they had a good queen. I thought they had plenty of room. But we've got to look upstream to see why they are today based on what happened weeks ago. Which also means that where they are today can tell us where they're going to be in a couple weeks to 3 weeks from now. There's a lag time in beekeeping. We're seeing a snapshot of the past, but we're also able to see proof and the trajectory of the colony in the future. And that's dependent upon these 3 primary environmental drivers of weather, rainfall, and forage availability. When these things align in our favor, everything down below looks the way we want it to look in a hive. When 1 or 2 of these things are off, everything down below is affected, and things don't quite look the way we want them to in a hive. And usually in that case, we misread the brood pattern, the brood tightening, the queen quality, why a hive is swarming, why they don't have as many adults as we think they should, a large enough population, and why they might be a little bit pissy. So this is the upstream and the downstream of why our colonies don't look like the one next to it despite the same care, because each colony is at a different point on this and under different pressures. It all has to do with what's going on outside first. Now I've got a tool coming out, ideally by this spring, where you can actually map the progression of your bees. It is way more advanced than just note taking. And I'm really excited about this project. I've been working on it for a while and it's so close to being done. But until then, if you'd love to learn more about signal-based beekeeping so that you can understand your colonies the way that you really want them to, check out volumes 3 and 4 of my books in the signal-based series. They're in my bookstore, also available as ebooks. You can find them in the first comment below, it's pinned, or the description below. I appreciate you guys joining me and going through my nerdy non-digital whiteboard together. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Hive Doctor out.